In our last video, we explored the secret base within the basement of Riverside Manor. There we discovered the Order of Mysteries, a post-apocalyptic secret society tasked with fighting crime in Appalachia. But now, everyone's gone. We were inducted into the Order as an initiate by walking through the main door, but to unlock the rest of the Order's secrets, we have to rise in the ranks. To achieve the next rank, Novice, we have to be promoted by our mentor. We were automatically assigned a mentor by Kryptos, the mainframe computer in the base. Kryptos assigned Natasha Hunt to be our mentor, and it told us that Natasha was last seen at Lewisburg. Now, we have to head to Lewisburg to see if we can find any trace of Natasha Hunt. We find Lewisburg nearly due south of Riverside Manor, though it is in another zone. It's located in Zone B of the Ash Heap. Enemies are a bit trickier here. Lewisburg is a level 25 to 35 town. The road into Lewisburg branches off from Highway 83A to the south, so if we're arriving from the north, the direction of Riverside Manor, we'll cross Highway 95, and then we have to climb up a hill to arrive on the northern outskirts of Lewisburg. Here we find Scorched attacking ghouls, but as soon as we arrive, they switch targets. After killing the Scorched, it was here that I found the Savage Divide treasure map number 5. I've collected many treasure maps so far. Someday soon I'll put together a video digging up the treasure at the end of each. But for now, on to Lewisburg. The signs outside Lewisburg describe it as the coolest small town in America. Lewisburg is a giant square broken into 4 quadrants. West Washington Street travels east to west at the southernmost end of the square. Then we find Court Street traveling north to south on the western edge of the town. Between these 2 streets, we find 4 quadrants. The 2 southernmost ones are almost complete ruins. We don't find any intact buildings to explore. But the top 2 quadrants do still have some intact buildings. But more interestingly, we find fire escapes which grant us rooftop access, where we will find some interesting goodies. And at the northern edge of the town is Foster Street, running east to west. There is a church to the north, completely boarded up that we can't explore, a graveyard even further north, next to the town's water tower, a bot stop station on the eastern outskirts of the town, and a train station on the southern side of town. Now, the post-apocalyptic residents of this town were in the middle of celebrating a spring garden festival. At the time, whatever cataclysmic event destroyed all life in West Virginia struck. And so we find Main Street completely boarded up. Tents and market stalls lining the streets and banners draped between the buildings. We'll turn Lewisburg upside down in search of Natasha Hunt, and along the way, we'll uncover a few clues hinting at some of the greater things that were happening before and after the war here in West Virginia. I arrived at the northwestern corner of the town and then wandered all over trying to kill the Scorched. So to establish a point of reference from which to explore, we'll move to the southernmost edge of the town to first explore Lewisburg Station. If we arrive from the front, we find graffiti on a wall, "Man before machine." If, however, we arrive from the south, we have to cross a railway track, and we find a warning sign posted, "Not a public crossing, all persons are warned not to trespass." Stepping onto the train platform, we can open the rear door to find a responder vendor bot. Many of the train station vendor bots share the same inventory and have the same caps to spend. We can use the station as a bit of a pit stop. Outside on the platform, we find an ammunition vending machine, and inside, we find a stash box. This box is connected to our stash back at our camp. And next to this is the Lewisburg Station terminal. Here we learn the same thing that we'll learn at all other train terminals here in Appalachia. If we choose ticketing, we get an error message. "Ticketing dispenser malfunction. Please contact station staff immediately." Backing out of this and into information, we learn that we're at the Lewisburg Station on the Red Line, which before the war connected to the Welch Station and the Watauga Station. And if we choose estimated wait times, we learn that we have to wait for 1,000 years and 1,000 days. Well, let's see if we can go do something else with our time. At the western corner of the train station next to some lockers, we find an armor workbench, useful for scrapping all our goods. And in the nearby bathroom, all we find is a plunger and an umbrella. Heading out the door, however, we see that even though we cleared the scorched, super mutants have spawned in Lewisburg. We'll have to keep our eyes open for more. Heading down the stairs, we can loot some of the containers and then give closer attention to the signs we find right outside the station. We find a picket sign, "Work for men, not machines." This is close to the man before machine graffiti we found against the wall. I wonder if we can find something that can explain this. Nearby, we find a voting booth. And it looks like the votes were automated. We see voting machines just outside. The people of Appalachia were voting on the Appalachian Prosperity Act, ballot measure number 6. Vote yes for a brighter future, a better future. Don't stand in the way of progress. This piece of propaganda includes a human hand and a robot hand pointing at the same ballot measure. We begin to get an idea of what this was all about. However, tagging the vote counters does nothing. Just northwest of this is another voting stand. Here we find a hand scanner, which does nothing for us, but presumably all you had to do was scan your hand to be confirmed as an Appalachian resident in order to vote. Nearby we find the Voter Services Terminal. Welcome, voter. This experimental system was designed to make long lines and wait times a thing of the past. Please join us for this year's inaugural test on Thursday, November 2nd, 2077. Error. Elections have been suspended indefinitely. Please contact election administrator. Well, we understand why the vote was suspended. They were sadly interrupted by the bombs. But let's see what the vote was all about. Browsing active ballot measures. Automated Voting System of Appalachia, AVA. Moving democracy into the 21st century. Ballot measures, November 2nd, 2077. Special election, Senator Appalachia Territory. Previously held by Samuel Blackwell. New candidates, Ellen Jallitson and Jack Daugherty. So this was a special election. The previous senator stepped down, Samuel Blackwell. I wonder why. And there was a ballot measure, Measure 6, the Appalachian Prosperity Act, to issue a bond of $2.6 billion to initiate and support the process of full automation of the Appalachian state and local governments. All human workers must be phased out of government by 2087. Yay or nay? They were gonna automate the entire government? Seems a tad reckless. I guess it's a good thing they never had a chance to vote on this particular measure, but now I think we better understand the protest signs and graffiti just outside the train station. Human beings didn't want to see their jobs taken by robots. We now find ourselves on the southwestern corner of the giant square that is Lewisburg. We'll explore the whole town in a clockwise fashion, starting by traveling north up Court Street. The southwesternmost quadrant is completely ruined. We find a couple of houses blasted out, and nearly everything else is boarded up. We find a cross street separating the southern quadrants from the northern, and here we find more super mutants. I saw a couple and didn't realize exactly how many were nearby. There were just too many. I had to retreat to the train station for cover. Well, after having attracted the attention of every super mutant in town, we can continue by again trying to travel north up Court Street. We'll pass the street leading to the center of town for now, and instead continue north. To the right, we find a tent with 2 printers set out. Special election vote, and here we find a ballot printer. So this is how people got their ballots, but sadly, when we try to activate it, it says the printer does not respond to your input. So continuing north, we see a greenhouse hiding behind one of the big boarded up buildings, but sadly not a lot of plants we can harvest inside. We only find a toolbox and a few other random pieces of scrap. Heading back into town, we can take Foster Street east. Across the northern quadrants, we see a fire truck parked here and petrified people off in the distance. There are a few alleys. We'll explore these in a minute. Continuing east and then turning north, we see a bit of a picnic area. Here we find tables bedecked in plastic plates, aluminum TV dinner trays, all sorts of cutlery. A great place to hit for plastic if you need to craft shotgun shells, though we do have to step over skeletons. There's a burgers and hot dog stand at the northern end of the side road, and we see a door back there, but to access the door, we have to head northwest and round a barrier. Here we find a ruined car, a grill, and the door we can open. For our efforts, we find a few containers to loot and a recipe. This time I found some infused blood leaf tea, as well as a first aid kit. Back into town, we see a few more stands along this road. Nothing much in the red one. In the green one, we find a Nuka-Cola and a couple of containers, but that's it. So we'll continue east along Foster Street. We spy a big smear of blood. It leads to a corpse tucked between a Nuka-Cola machine and a cigarette machine. This is the body of Natasha Hunt, and she's wearing the same costume as the young woman whom we found at Camden Park. On her corpse, we find two holotapes. The first, Mistress Natasha Hunt's login, is what we need to use on Kryptos back at Riverside Manor. And the second one, Order of Mysteries Lewisburg.
Good morning. I'm sorry to drop this on you. Tiana hasn't reported in from her last mission. Olivia and I are heading out to investigate. I have a lead on a raider scouting party. I need you to follow up on it. Standard protocol. Secure the location, look for signs of raider activity, and report back to the manor. Be careful, dear. I can't bear to lose anyone else.
Well, we can only hope that Shannon Rivers never learned what happened to Natasha Hunt. With that, we complete the primary portion of the quest, but an optional portion unlocks, asking us to search for raiders in Lewisburg. That's right, in her holotape, we learned that Natasha was here hunting a raider scouting party, which may explain why we find her dead. We'll keep our eyes open as we continue to explore. Nearby, in the northwestern quadrant of the town, we find an open door to the Serenity Road Art Gallery. Inside, we find a variety of art pieces on the wall and display cases set out, but sadly in ruin. Heading behind the counter, we find the main office. We can loot some clipboards for springs, and we find a skill level 2 locked floor safe. Inside, I found quite a stash of ammunition and scrap. Here I also found a short Gatling gun. I'm speccing in rifles with this character, so sadly I'm not going to be able to use it, but this is a completely new weapon in Fallout 76, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it sounds like. Before we explore the alleys, we'll head back out to the street. There were lots of booths out along this road, people hawking their goods and homemade wares, but this road ends to the east. And here we find a boarded up city hall, and also a super mutant where we can make use of our brand new gun.
Time!
Okay, not very efficient. Well, I haven't specced into it, but a whole lot of fun to mess with. Turning around, we see that the city hall is indeed completely boarded up. Sadly, we can't head inside, but they were playing music during this special election. We see a stage set out where we find an acoustic guitar, which we can play with a well-tuned bonus, some blocks and toys set out, and a pink hand. I didn't know what this was at the time, but this pink hand is important in a quest later on. I'll cover it in greater detail when we cover that quest in the future. There's a banjo up here, and then we can jump down to loot the picnic tables out here, where we find a bunch of beverages and a few coolers. Now, just north of the city hall, I saw a little walking path and a fence. Here we see a sign that looks like a man looking through a telescope. Okay, maybe we'll find a good sightseeing ledge. Following the path brings us to Pleasant Hills Cemetery. And instead of a glorious view, we find mole rats. Mole rats dead, we can explore the graveyard. Looks like someone has been grave robbing. We find a few graves exhumed. This one has a mining headlamp mod. lying on top of a broken coffin. Heading down from here, we find a sarcophagus with the lid missing and a skill level 3 locked safe sitting within it. Going further down the hill, we find another sarcophagus, this time with a bunch of beer bottles and gold bars lying amongst the bones of its occupant. And next to this is another exhumed coffin, but the safe inside had its door blown off and its contents looted. The occupant is now leaning against his own headstone. Taking the stairs all the way down to the bottom, we find a tomb inside more glowing mole rats, including a crowned one. And it looks like the sun is rising, which is great news. We're going to get a better view of Lexington. Heading inside the tomb, we see plaques on the wall, but none of them we can read. There's an explosives crate and another broken sarcophagus in the corner, but this one with another skill level 3 locked safe. It makes sense that we only find the hardest locked safes left in the graveyard. At the time, I didn't have the lockpicking to open them, but the contents are randomly generated. Heading out of the tomb, we find a lunch pail, and that's it for the cemetery, so we'll take the road up the hill south back to Lewisburg. Back at City Hall, we find more ballot printers outside. Moving south, we can explore the southern end of Foster Street where we find a gun stall. This is a great little place to hit for all sorts of ammunition, including shotgun shells, which my character was using at the moment. We find a few common guns, a 10mm pipe pistol, combat shotgun, and hunting rifle. With Foster Street explored, we can begin to explore some of these alleys. Heading south down an alley in the western quadrant from Foster Street, we again find that back door to the office of the art gallery. Turning around from here, we find a back door into another building within this quadrant. We arrive in the front entrance and see exactly what this was. We see a printer on the counter, but the terminal's busted. Going through the door behind the counter, we find a footlocker behind the stairs, and heading upstairs, we see a bit of an office space. There's a radio and some scrap on a writing table to the northwest, and turning northeast, we find another office space, and it looks like there's an attic directly above us. The floor has collapsed. On the desktop here, we find a note. Note to Lori. Hey Lori, it took a while, but the scouting party finally found some gas mask filters in the back of an abandoned store. I put them inside the truck in the attic. T.S. Gas mask filters? What did the residents of Lewisburg need with gas mask filters before the war? Was the air quality really that bad? Though it doesn't read like a pre-war note. Whoever found the filters was rummaging through the ruins. Maybe the residents of this town survived and were trying to rebuild here, sharing gas masks so they could stay in their town despite the toxic air. Next to this note is the Lewisburg Visitors Center terminal. After hacking it, we read, "Welcome, it's another great day in Lewisburg." In the first one, Louisburg Newsletter. Hello everyone, it's another great day in Lewisburg. The community team has prepared this month's newsletter to inform you of the happenings in Lewisburg. Sky Gardens. We are overjoyed at the success of our roof garden initiative. The flowers, produce, clean air, and fellowship is something we can all enjoy. If you'd like to be part of our Sky Gardens, let Ms. Helene know. Toxic ash public service announcement. Although we are working hard to keep Lewisburg pristine, sometimes the weather isn't always cooperative. Please make sure you wear your gas masks. Feel free to stop by the visitor center for replacement filters. Okay, so we're reading messages from survivors of the apocalypse who chose to stay in Lewisburg despite the toxic air instead of moving on. And they even went as far as to plant sky gardens and host a spring festival. Well, they certainly had hope. Art exhibition. This month, Lacey Molina is exhibiting at the Serenity Road Art Gallery. Please stop by and appreciate her beautiful oil paintings. Spring Garden Festival. It's almost time for this year's festival. This spring, we want to highlight our beautiful sky gardens. Make sure to visit downtown this Saturday for food, flowers, crafts, and live music. In the next one, we find a category for electronic mail, but network not found. And below this, we find an option to disengage a nearby lock. Let's see if we can find this safe. On a wall nearby, we find a poster promoting Uncanny Caverns. We'll explore that place a bit later. We find the safe on the other side of that writing desk, but sadly inside I didn't find much for me. Heading into the bathroom, we find a mirror with chems, and that's about it. Now let's see if we can find a way into the attic. We saw that room above us, but we don't find a stairway up from here. Back down in the alleyway, we can take the fire escape ladder up directly south of the door to the art gallery. At the top, we find two paths, a path to the rooftops to the northeast, and then one directly west of us. Heading west first, we find a duffel bag, which was empty in my game, and then taking a wrap south, we find a hole in the roof leading to the attic directly above the visitor center. Here we find a radio we need to turn off to avoid demonetization and an end of dungeon steamer truck. Strangely enough, we don't find any gas masks or filters in here. Is this evidence that the town was looted after the spring festival? But if so, by whom? Now, the Fallout 76 official strategy guide says that there is a bobblehead here, but someone must have looted it because I didn't find it in my game. Heading back outside, we find a little rooftop greenhouse. This one had a first aid kit and some potted plants, and we find a skeleton on the floor holding a tin pitcher. Turning around, we can now explore to the northeast. This brings us to another rooftop greenhouse with, again, two paths to explore. We can go south or west. We'll go south for now. Here we find a flower bed with some rhododendrons and soot flowers, good for tea, which leads to another rooftop with more soot flowers and rhododendrons. Lewisburg is a great place to hit if you need to stock up on tea-making supplies, including fertilizer. But this is a dead end, so turning around, we can retrace our steps north. Here we find another rooftop greenhouse, this time with ash rose plants. Again, wonderful for tea. From here, we can take a ladder north to a rooftop overlooking the entire town. And here we find the corpses of 3 raiders. The first, wearing a red bandana, lies slumped against a pipe. And the second is draped over the ledge of a building, apparently shot while trying to snipe someone below. This is Carrie, and on his body we find Carrie's orders. Carrie, got some new intel. One of the girls will be out your way on Thursday. Get word to Shar and his boys in Big Bend. You're gonna need backup. Stake out Lewisburg, set up an ambush, find a good sniper's nest, and don't underestimate her. If she gets a chance to react, you're all dead. Don't screw this up. Brody. So the raiders were hunting down the mistresses of mystery. But how did this Brody know that Natasha was gonna be here? I guess the years of being thwarted by the secretive order finally forced the raiders to organize. But what happened here? Did Carrie and Natasha kill each other simultaneously? Or did something else, something bigger than them both, kill them and everyone else here in town? Around his corpse is littered a bunch of ammunition and another note next to a stealth boy. Easy pickings. Alright, we've been eyeing Lewisburg for a while now. It's actually impressive they've stayed organized this long, but we found a weak spot. Those stupid sky gardens they pretend clean the air. They've got bridges connecting the gardens across the rooftops in the city. If we get up there, it's easy pickings on everyone below. Here's the plan. This Saturday is their Spring Garden Festival. I'm sure we all remember them from before the bombs. They all pile into downtown and pretend to be artsy while listening to crappy music. Absolutely no one will be expecting a raid. We go through the visitor center to the rooftops, set up around the festival, and, like I said, easy pickings. So the residents of Lewisburg did survive the war. The toxic air wasn't from pre-war mining nearby. It came as a result of the bombs. They built those gardens on the rooftop after the war in an attempt to clean the air, and that's why they were stockpiling the gas masks. But this note said that the raid was on Saturday, whereas the other note said to expect Natasha on Thursday. Trying to piece together the events that happened here, I think the most likely story is that Carrie and his raiders came back to Lewisburg. We remember from the visitor center terminal that the festival was on a Saturday, and in that note, they were told to climb on the roof to snipe the people below on a Saturday. Now we see all of the festival decorations still up, which means whoever put them up wasn't around to take them down after the festival. I think Carrie and his raider gang were successful. They arrived on Saturday and murdered everyone here. Now I suppose Carrie could have come here the Thursday before to assassinate Natasha, but I think it's unlikely for the assassination from this rooftop to have gone unnoticed by the people of Lewisburg. Therefore, I think the most likely explanation is that he came back after massacring the town the next Thursday, or some Thursday thereafter, to take up the sniper's nest he's familiar with by now and use it again this time to assassinate Natasha. I believe the blood trail by Natasha's body tells us that she initially survived the assassination, killing all of her assassins first, then dragged her bleeding body into the corner by the Nuka-Cola machine, where she propped herself up against the wall. and died. Now, the Fallout 76 official strategy guide says there's another bobblehead in this area, possibly here on this rooftop, but when I came through, I couldn't find it. Here we find a cooking station, useful for turning all the plants we've harvested into teas before they rot. And from here, we see another rooftop to the west, and this one has a chemistry station on top. I needed to get to there so I could break down all the scrap I was carrying. Jumping down to the ground, we can pass through the visitor center back out to the street. Turning east down the road, it looks like the super mutants have respawned. With the super mutants dead, we can head to the northeastern quadrant and explore these alleyways to find a staircase to the rooftops above. Here we can explore through the back door of one of these ruins. This is really ruined, but it looks like it was a diner before the war. We see plates and a few bowls of food set out, and then a duffel bag next to a woman's skeleton. Heading back to the alleyway behind the diner, we see no fewer than 3 fire escape ladders. The one nearest to the back door, however, leads to a dead end, so instead we'll take the fire escape ladder we find to the southwest. This leads to another rooftop where we find yet another greenhouse. Taking the ramp east, we find 2 skeletons in lawn chairs next to a cooler and an ammo box. Here we find wild carrot flowers and soot flowers growing from the planters, good for teas, as well as more bags of fertilizer. Moving west, we see a petrified corpse in the middle of this bridge. This leads to another rooftop garden with more rhododendrons and soot flowers, bags of fertilizer, and a tool case. This then leads to that other fire escape that we saw in the alleyway leading up. We can take this to the very top where at last we find the chemistry station. We can use this to break everything down if we're encumbered. And directly behind us, we find another greenhouse with an explosives box and ash rows inside. With the quadrants explored, we can finally move to the eastern side of the town. Here we see the water tower towering above Lewisburg. Moving south of here, we find even more ruined houses, most of which are boarded up. There are skins drying behind one, and it looks like some of the scorched have respawned. Continuing south down the eastern road, we find a gate to a backyard playground and garden. We can round one of the houses to take care of another scorched. There is a gate in the back of this garden, which we can use to explore a nearby red-roofed building. Getting closer, we find that this was a bot stop. There are 2 terminals here. Looks like pre-war residents could have used this to summon a robot to help with some activity. This brings us back to West Washington Street, where we find graffiti on a ruined train car, "Block the Bot," and the Lewisburg town sign. Heading towards the train car, if we jump in the back, we find 2 skeletons, and next to them is a Civil War era dress and a Civil War era top hat. So you can get a full Civil War era costume in the back of this train car. With that, we've explored the entire town of Lewisburg, and we got what we came here to find. Heading back to Riverside Manor, we can take the Pulowski Preservation Shelter elevators down to the secret lair. I found that I had to hop out of my power armor, even when wearing the veil without a helmet, to pass through the laser grid. Inside, we can access the Kryptos terminal. And now that we have Mistress Natasha Hunt's login holotape, we find an option to log in as her. Under her login credentials, we find most of the same stuff we found in ours, with a new section, Administrative Actions. Here, Natasha could have registered as a mentor, but since the order is dead, we don't see any initiates to take on as proteges. And directly beneath this, we can use her credentials to authorize a promotion. Select the promotion you wish to authorize. Authorize promotion, Novice of Mysteries. She only had the authority to promote an initiate to a novice. We can then scroll through a list of the known initiates, Alexis, Zoe, and Justine, and then also the unknown user, ourselves. Choosing this one, we find success. Please ask the selected user to log in and claim their promotion. So, backing out of Natasha Hunt's login credentials, we can then log in with ours. We get a new message. You have now earned the title of Novice of Mysteries. As a novice, you will continue to train with your mentor and the Mistress of Novices as you work to master the skills, tactics, and combat techniques of the Mistress of Mystery. We are now authorized to craft the Garb of Mysteries at the Fabricator. We also get a brand new holotape from Shannon Rivers, and to continue, we must listen to her message. Now, this screen was a little deceptive. It appears like the text on this screen has finished loading, but it hasn't. We have to click the screen again to find the option to click Continue, which gives us the holotape. With the holotape in hand, we can finally listen to Order of Mysteries rank Novice.
Congratulations, dear. I'm sorry I can't be with you today. But I'm sure the other girls can walk you through your vows. Things have been difficult for us of late. In 8 years, we only lost one member of our family. In the past 3 months, we've lost 7, all to raider ambushes. I've asked Eve to accelerate our training program. If the worst should happen, we need everyone to be ready. In order to become a full member of the Order, you will need to master the tools of the Mistress of Mystery: sword, shot, and shadow. Work with Eve and your mentor. When the time comes to prove yourself, Kryptos has the details.
Our quest continues. We have to craft the Phantom Device, the Blade of Bastet, the Voice of Set, and then master these tools. But now we have the option to craft the Garb of Mysteries at the Fabricator. So heading on over, we can choose Fabrication Services, and we find a new option, Novice Garb of Mysteries. Backing out of the terminal and inspecting the garb in our inventory, we see that we have to be level 25 to wear it. It looks a lot like the costume we've seen on the corpses of the young women we've found scattered across Appalachia. The major difference being that it has some sort of golden frill, similar to the white frill we saw on the portrait of Shannon Rivers inside her mansion. Her dress even has the green V's on it like this one does. It's very different than the formal gown that Kent was talking about in his terminal entries and that we saw on the cover of the Unstoppables comics from Fallout 4. So this must be the new costume the Mistress of Mystery would have worn if the Silver Shroud TV show had ever been made. Even though we can't get it until level 25, this dress becomes useful even late in the game. At level 25, it starts with only 15 ballistic damage resistance and 15 energy damage resistance, but it gives us +1 to perception, and though it doesn't say so here, the Fallout 76 official strategy guide tells us that it improves our sneak chance as well. Then every 5 levels, we can upgrade it further, and each upgrade step goes up a further 5 ballistic and 5 energy damage resist. To upgrade it, we just have to have the Garb of Mysteries crafted from the Fabricator, bring it to any armor workbench, and then it simply requires cloth, leather, and steel to upgrade it every 5 levels. Now, despite what Kent and Frederick were talking about concerning ballistic weave in the terminal entries, when I switched to modify, I didn't find an option to add ballistic weave to the Garb of Mysteries. Indeed, even though I had the Garb of Mysteries in my inventory, it didn't even appear in the menu under Modify. It only appeared in the menu under Craft, and only through the crafting interface could I upgrade it every 5 levels. Perhaps we are to suppose that the ballistic weave is already woven into the dress, which explains its damage and energy resist, though why it doesn't cost more ballistic weave to upgrade it is beyond me. Now that we have Natasha Hunt's login, we can access 2 new terminals. From Kryptos, if we turn around, we can head up the stairs to the Council Chamber. Here we can finally access the Council Chamber terminal. The Order of Mysteries Council Chamber, recording status off, we find 2 options. In the first, recording controls, we can choose to start recording, but if we do, unable to connect to the recording system, please contact production for assistance. So this is just telling us that this terminal was able to record the meetings that went on here in this council chamber. Backing out of recording controls, we can choose recording archive, where we find 1 recording to listen to. We can select council meeting, October 5th, 2086 at 10:01 in the morning. That ejects the holotape, and we now have to load it into our Pip-Boy.
All right, let's keep this brief. Vanessa and Brianna are missing. Given recent events, we should assume they've been ambushed.
What do you mean, assume? Are we just giving up on them?
Of course not, but
We should take rescue teams. Groups of 3 or 4. They can't possibly take us all on. We're shorthanded enough as it is. We can't have everyone on search and rescue. Damn it. None of this makes sense. We've fought those bastards for years. Any one of us could take down an entire raider squad ourselves. Most of us have. But now, all of a sudden, we're the ones getting wiped out? Why? What changed?
I don't know, but we have to find a way forward. Eve, I want you to ramp up our training program. The younger girls need to be able to defend themselves.
Of course.
Olivia, watch the manor. If you see anything suspicious, report back at once.
Sure.
I mean it. No games, no pursuit.
Yeah, got it.
Everyone else? I'm going to post a new mission this afternoon. I won't assign it out, but I want you all to take a look at it. If anyone has any better ideas, see me in my office. Dismissed.
So the raiders were suddenly becoming a problem where they weren't a problem in the past. Were the raiders just becoming better organized? She mentioned a new mission, but even when we log in with Natasha's credentials and check the mission board, we don't see it. Perhaps someone already took it. The next terminal we've unlocked is the Infirmary Terminal. The Order of Mysteries Infirmary, Duty Officer Blank, Chief Medical Officer Mistress Natasha Hunt, Medical Officer Mistress Alana Roderick, Aide Seeker Isabella Cole, Aide Novice Cora Belmont. So Natasha was their doctor. By losing her in the field, they really lost a lot. In the first one, Infirmary Orders, we find 4 options. In the first, Emergency Care, Order, limit emergency care based on your qualifications. Notes, none of us are doctors. None of us have any real medical training. We've learned a lot over the past few years, but all the textbooks in Charleston won't make you a surgeon. Just because you can rip the arms off a Protectron medic doesn't mean you can use them to resuscitate someone. In an emergency, take a step back and assess what kind of care you can safely provide. Do that. You can be a hero everywhere else. And the next one, Antibiotic Restrictions. Order, reserve antibiotic as a last-minute treatment. The dysentery epidemic exhausted our stock of antibiotics. There's another supply run to AVR Medical up on the mission board, but that place has been picked clean over the years. I asked the headmistress if we could reach out to the responders for help. You can guess how that went. Until we can replenish our supplies, focus on providing supportive and palliative care, and use herbal remedies where possible. Why did Shannon Rivers not want the Order to contact the responders? Did she just really want to maintain their secrecy? In the next one, Stimpaks and dehydration. Order, monitor for dehydration following Stimpak use. Notes, while not mentioned in the medical literature, dehydration appears to be a serious side effect of repeated Stimpak use. Patients receiving Stimpaks as part of their treatment regimen should be monitored for dehydration and administered additional water and/or IV fluids. Where possible, members should avoid the use of Stimpaks in the field and instead report to the infirmary for treatment. That's a bit of a tutorial message for us. And in the final one, Chem Lockup. Chems are to be kept locked in the infirmary safe at all times. Notes, the use of chems for performance enhancement is strictly forbidden. Chems promote dependency and addiction. Recovery can be long and painful in the absence of a Dictol and hampers mission readiness. Any chems recovered in the course of a mission are to be turned over to infirmary staff for safekeeping. Any further incidents of theft should be tracked and reported. Backing out of orders, we can now explore Infirmary Logs. The following audio logs are available. Infirmary Log, September 17th, 2086. Backing out to play it on our Pip-Boy.
This is the Infirmary Log for Tuesday, September 17th. Mistress Natasha Hunt reporting. We have 2 active cases. Alexis is in critical condition following the accident in the Hall of Trials today. I've done my best to stabilize her, but I'm no surgeon. She's lost a lot of blood. If she goes into shock, there's not much we can do. Laura is still recovering from bone worms. Her blood work is clean, but I've recommended light duty for the next 2 weeks. There was one minor incident today. Olivia commandeered an entire bag of Stimpaks and took off without a word. I put in a complaint, but headmistress's daughter and all,
She never changes.
So there was an accident in the Hall of Trials. Alexis got critically injured. She was one of only a few initiates, which means she likely wasn't the corpse we found at Camden Park, unless she quickly recovered after this holotape was recorded. And what did Olivia need with a bag of stim packs? She sounded like she had an attitude when we heard her voice during the council meeting. Then again, her mother was really stern with her, but it also looks like she was getting preferential treatment being headmistress's daughter and all. Back in the terminal, we can read the medical records. Error, all medical records on file have expired. For access to archival records, please contact production. Oh, great. And finally, we can use the terminal to unlock the safe if we want to, though we already picked it in a previous episode. Sadly, the chem stash that they were bragging about in the terminal was only one piece of psycho. Now, we need to log back into Kryptos to discover how we can earn the rest of the mistress's regalia. The Phantom Device, the Blade of Bastet, and the Voice of Set. We'll tackle those 3 tasks in our next episode. We walk away with the excellent armor piece Garb of Mysteries, but also with a bunch of questions. What happened to Alexis after she was injured in the Hall of Trials? Did she really die? How did the Raiders know that Natasha Hunt was going to be at Lewisburg? How did the Raiders get more organized? And why was the Order suddenly losing? To learn the answer to these and other questions, be sure to tune in to my next episode. I publish many Fallout videos each and every week on this channel, and also host live Fallout 76 live streams. If you don't want to miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have a shirt shop with completely unique designs you can't find anywhere else. My designs come in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find my designs on other products as well, like smartphone cases, stickers, mugs, posters, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for the next episode.